So we're going to talk about the origins of Tremors and how it all began
Hmm.
32 years ago. And it was Pam Dixon that first introduced you to the project and to Ron Underwood. How did Pam and Ron and Gail and everyone convince you to sign on to the movie?
I don't really remember the specifics of getting convinced, but I could tell you, to be brutally honest, I was running out of money, and I was feeling like at a real kind of low point career-wise. You know, I suffer from uh, the actor's curse, which is that I always think that every single job I do is my last, and after Footloose came out, I had a series of leading roles that just all bombed, just kind of one after another, after another, after another. And I felt that my, my career was really like close to ending. And my wife was pregnant with our first child. And my mother had also been diagnosed with cancer. And I was kind of at a terrified sort of like point in my life, both, in my personal life and in my career wise. And I saw the bank account dwindling and was feeling a lot of, financial and kind of personal pressure. So when my agent called me up and said, "There's this movie. I don't know if you're gonna like it. It's kind of a horror movie, but it's sort of funny, and it's like it's about giant worms underground." I was like, "Oh my god, my career is in the toilet. Like, if this is what it's come to, this is like the the bottom of the barrel."
Did you feel it was a risk taking on this role?
Oh, I did, yeah. But what happened was, uh, I read the script and I said, I don't know that this is going to work, but I know that I can have fun with the part. Um, and I know that the writing is strong, and that the relationship between these two guys, if you take all of the silliness of the graboids out of it, you know what I mean. I said I think the relationship between the two guys is funny and interesting, and I really responded to the fact that you don't people don't often write. Usually, if you write the lead, like a lead guy, he's either like super smart, or he's super street smart, or he's like a real badass, or he's got superpowers or something. What I really liked was that, Val is he's just not that smart a guy necessarily. And he's not successful, and he doesn't have superpowers, and he's not really that much of a badass either,
And there's an innocence about it.
Yeah, there's an innocence about him too. And so I really responded to that. And kind of it was so signing on was a sort of a combination of uh, really really needing to work, and really feeling like I needed to work, and also seeing that there was possibly something that I could do with this guy.
So the you know the when Tremors was released 30 years ago, it wasn't exactly a box office.
No, it was a disaster.
Why do you feel it's become the cult classic that it is?
We have to think about um, the time. I mean, I'll say a couple of things about the release of the film. Funny Scary is a very very difficult thing to market. It always has been. The amount of There are exceptions to the rule, and when those exceptions happen, they really are an anomaly. Um, I like it as a genre myself. I love things like Shaun of the Dead and Zombieland, and uh, there's a lot of cool movies that live within that in that world. But it's a lot easier from a marketing standpoint to tell people this is a scary movie or this is a funny movie, because then they know what they're doing on their weekend, and they know they can talk to their date and say, do you like scary? You know, whatever, you know. So you know, the marketing materials and the way in for Tremors was a little confusing. I don't even remember, you know, the you know, the original poster. I guess when you look at it now, it seems like it was really cool, but I don't know if it quite told the story about the fact that the movie had a sort of tongue-in-cheek kind of attitude to it. I think they leaned a little bit more into it was just a monster movie, and so for whatever reason, people really didn't go. I remember going to the premiere. I think the premiere was in Westwood, and you know, you can just feel that studio's not really behind it. That it's probably not going to get any kind of love from the critics, and the chances are, you know, from my standpoint, I was like, yep, here we go. I'm in another bomb, and that's exactly what it was. At the time, the video rental business was really exploding. Blockbuster was the biggest thing going. Everybody was going to the video store to rent a movie and come home, and there were stacks of titles that didn't have theatrical releases. Now, in my mind, direct-to-video was like the last thing you want it to be. Somehow, it kind of caught on in that world, and you know, you'd go to the video store, and they'd have ordered, you know, 10 copies of it. That was always a barometer on how popular things were, because you know, literally the owner of the video store would get a certain amount of copies, and they'd rent them and bring them back, and the whole thing. So I can't say that. Well, first off, it didn't really do much for me in terms of my career, because it's not like I was trying to have a video rental business. That was not what my, you know, that's not where I wanted to kind of live. But I think there was a cumulative sort of effect of the popularity of that movie, to the point where, at this point, most people don't realize that it wasn't a successful movie. You know, like most people that I talk to, if I tell them that, they go, "Wasn't Tremors? No, Tremors is not a bomb. Tremors is a classic." You know, it's and there's not a lot of movies that have really done that. I don't think. You know, there's a handful, but not that many.
Talking about Fred Ward, you had quite the romance when you were making the film. Can you talk about your relationship with him and how you bonded and listened to Django Reinhardt and stuff like that?
Yeah. Fred Ward is, you know, is and was, well, he was an actor who you know, who I already knew, not personally, but I knew his work, and I thought he was a really great, interesting choice, because Fred has a real, he's got a real genuine sort of American cowboy, you know, man of the earth kind of persona, and 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 he was just he's, you could have gone and said, well, let's see who's kind of like a funny guy that we can put in this part, you know. But they really didn't cast him that way. You know what I mean? They really wanted some authenticity in that role, and I thought he really lended a lot of authenticity to it. And I think that we immediately kind of bonded and made friends and started hanging out together and started talking a lot about music. He was really obsessed with jazz guitar at the time, and I played a little bit of guitar, and ended up playing a lot more over the course of you know, the years following Tremors. But but yeah, I was playing and writing songs, and he was like crazy about Django Reinhardt, and was his whole approach to the guitar was not really to learn guitar. It was like to it was like to learn to play some of the most complicated jazz chord structures and melodies, which is a really kind of like Renaissance man strange approach to an instrument. Me, I picked up the guitar so I could play Hey Jude, and it was as though you were. It's the difference between starting to like just do watercolors or saying, well, I want to work on like duplicating the Sistine Chapel. He has a very, very interesting approach to that, and very, very focused person and um, performer, and he's just such an unusual character that I really sparked to him, and we enjoyed our time in the desert together.
And talking about the desert, because it was all shot in London. Do you feel that there's something about that location that adds to the kind of the menace of it?
Well, I had never been to Lone Pine, California before we did the film, and I kind of had assumed that we would be shooting in LA because there are places within a stone's throw of LA that you can, create a small, dusty, you could have done this. There's a lot of places I've seen them since then, different ranches and stuff where you could have definitely created this. But the filmmakers really wanted to go to Lone Pine, and I was concerned about it on a really practical level, which was that Kira was so pregnant, and she could have had gone into labor during the shooting, and it was hours to get to any kind of a hospital. There were we had some kind of like birth, doulas like standing by, and she was driving down to L.A. To the for her weekly appointments with the obstetrician, but that was a little terrifying to me that she was going to go into labor in Lone Pine, and simultaneously we also had this thing where we really wanted to be together for this time, and this was a magical kind of special time for us. But we got there, and we had this, there was very few places to stay. It didn't really have the infrastructure even to put the crew up, and certainly nothing that was like a high end kind of thing. So down this little street, somebody was willing to move out of their house. I guess this is long before Airbnb, and we lived in this little house, and we used to. I remember just going, and we ate a lot of frozen pizza and lasagna, and I would go out. The majority of almost the whole movie is exterior day, which is another thing that's unusual for a horror movie, and a tough thing to pull off, by the way, to make things scary when it's exterior day. And it was hot, and it was dusty, and I'd go off in the morning, uh, to the wars basically, and drive down this long dirt road. By the time I was covered in dust by the time we get to work. And out in the middle of the desert was this town that had been created, and we would just kind of burn through the day. And when we started to lose the light, go back, and my very pregnant wife would be there, and we'd have some kind of dinner, and I don't know that. Maybe it was the place in terms of feeling ominous. I know that for myself, I was having very, very intense dreams and night terrors, and I was doing a lot of sleepwalking. In fact, I more than once picked her up out of bed and carried her out of the house, and to try to save her from monsters or whatever. but it was really metaphorical for what I was feeling about my life changing with fatherhood, et cetera. And and sometimes on the weekends we would drive up into the hills, and there's these very, very beautiful, strange kind of rock formations that are in and around Lone Pine that I guess traditionally they had shot quite a few old westerns on. When you picture the guy coming over the thing, getting shot, falling off of a big rock down into something that was, and we used some of them in the movie, obviously. So, I'm not a real spiritual person, but I would definitely say that it had a tingly, sort of magical essence, that town. Um, Also, there's something about the movies that are made on location, which are a little different than when everybody goes home to your individual houses. It's a lot different when we're all kind of thrown into a small situation where there's basically Double L, which was a bar, and there was a pizza joint. I don't even know if there was a diner. Maybe there was, but I don't
Did you
remember.
go dancing at the double?
Yeah, yeah. Double L would have like dancing. I think jukebox kind of stuff. I think, if I remember correctly. Yeah, we called it the Double Hell. I don't really know why, but it was really the only option.
But so I remember Steve, when I interviewed Steve Wilson, he said that it was just the filming conditions that were just guts. It was either boiling hot or freezing cold.
It was really, and a lot of dust, because the wind comes up in that kind of high desert situation, and you'd be out with masks, and it was hot for sure. And this is probably before we'd got either technologically or even um, medically hip to the importance of sunblock, and we used it, but it was probably not something that was we not we wouldn't pound the table the way we would now.
Any kind of like funny stories, things that happened there, how you kind of bonded as a team?
I mean, I think that everybody got along really well in the cast, and I think that there's an element of being, tossed into this challenging working environment and being away from home, and we're all dealing with the same heat and the same dust and the same um, you know town. It definitely brought us together. I remember having a really fun time making the movie. I think that there were a lot of laughs, and yeah, everybody was fantastic.
Um, Looking at the film today, I think you said in an interview that it really, really holds up. Why do you think that is?
Well, one thing I'll say about the film, I don't go back and look at my movies, but I did with Tremors probably 4 or 5 years ago, because I was developing it as a series, and it's an absolutely beautiful movie, shot in 35 millimeter, and it's it's kind of spectacular to look at. You forget what what the watching things on video, the transfers onto video, as opposed to now looking at the digital transfer of what it was. It's just really, really well shot and really well directed. I think Ron did an amazing job. Um, I, I guess I don't know. I guess it's really the essence of it is ordinary people dealing with extraordinary circumstances. And when it's an antidote to superheroes, it's kind of the opposite of that idea. When we, nothing against superhero movies. I don't want to get in trouble like Scorsese. Um, uh, but when everyone has, the power to whatever it is, destroy the world, or you see that again and again and again, and after a while, becomes. I think it gets kind of hard to relate to after a while. We're looking for the humanity out of superheroes, whereas something like Tremors, they're all just regular people. Melvin, he's just an annoying kid. You know, um, Bert Gummer, and everybody knows somebody, your uncle or whatever that comes to Thanksgiving and says we need to build a bunker, and they're coming for our jobs or whatever it is. You know what I mean? He kind of like represents that person. Um, and then Val and Earl, they're just kind of you know they're just kind of schlubby guys, and so I think that that's really the to me that's really the essence is um, just regular Joes, trying to fight big worms.
One of the things that Christopher told me, who produced the second, he said he feels it's the perfect family because it is just that blend of funny and scary. It's not too frightening to put the kids in front of, but it's enough to make it entertaining.
I think it's true that it is a good family movie, and I think that may be part of why it didn't work in the theater, and part of why it really worked on Blockbuster, on video, at home. I think I say the F word, but aside from that, there's no nudity. Um, the violence is nowhere near what a lot of big scary movies have violence wise. It's you're not seeing people tortured or co-eds being slashed. The threat is a created creature, but it does have enough scariness that if you're what I don't even know the age, but 10 years old, it's going to be something where you're going to go, Dad, your mom, I want to, so I do think that there's a lot to be said for the fact that it kind of has a family vibe. I can also tell you that there's something about it that speaks to the heartland of America, and I don't really quite know what that is, but it does. And the reason I feel that and sense that is because uh, I get people mention movies of mine to me, all the time, and you start to see in different parts of the world or different countries or different parts of America, urban centers or rural or whatever, um, that people responded more to one movie of mine or another. And Tremors comes from the heartland of the USA, and I I don't quite know why, but maybe it's big buckles and cowboy hats or something.
Can you give me one sentence that sums up your experience of Tremors?
I guess I would say that I was very, very reluctant to be in the movie and very disappointed with the outcome of it, the way that it performed uh, at the box office. But over time, it's something that I love and I'm proud of, and I think was ultimately, time has proven that it was a good decision ultimately to play that part.
Are you still good at pole
I've never been on a pole vault since the movie. I seem to remember though that I could be wrong about this. This would be a Ron Underwood or Steve question, but it seems like we might have actually had some pole vaulting training. Like someone came out and actually gave us some tips. I could be wrong about that. That's not something you just go and do, you know.
vault?
Uh-huh.
What kind of things do Tremors fans ask you
Well, what I always find strange is when people quote lines, back to me that I don't remember, and sometimes they come completely as a non sequitur. I can't even think of one. I kind of tend to forget my lines once I've said them, but somebody will come up to me and just kind of quote something that I said. One thing that always I found interesting was that uh, I started to get wind of the fact that my belt buckle was actually a woman's belt buckle, and I liked it because I didn't know it was a woman's belt buckle. But I guess in the tradition of belt buckles, man doesn't wear a heart shaped belt buckle, and uh, you know, my name was Valentine. Seemed to make sense. The costumer came to me with the belt buckle, and I was like, great. Obviously, I didn't do my research th to know that a real man wouldn't wear a heart shaped belt buckle, but maybe there was a certain serendipitous kind of um result there.
And are you a good handyman in real life? Are you good at putting up IKEA bookcase or something?
Yeah, I can put a bookcase together. I can. I'm not. I draw the line at electric and plumbing, and sometimes I feel like I think I'm probably in the middle. Uh, uh, I'll call the guy if I need to. I don't build shelves. I certainly am better with a hammer than I was in the movie.
Because that scene in the movie was, although it was entirely scripted, that was one of the improv moments.
It was improv. Yeah, definitely.
Can you talk a little bit about that scene? Because that's a scene that people really, really love. I think they really connect with it. Because I think quite a lot of men can really relate.
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of speaks to Val's character that he's not even really good at that. You know, like he doesn't really even know how to use a hammer, and that's something he's a handyman. You know what I mean? That's something he definitely should know how to do.
But he's also trying to impress Earl in that scene. I think that's what's so cute about it, and it taps into the whole bromance thing.
Yeah, I'm trying to impress Earl, and I look up to Earl, um, and there's an interesting kind of thing there because he's not old enough to be my father, Fred. We're probably only what, I don't know, 5, 10 years or something, somewhere in there apart. Um, but there is this older brother kind of relationship where I'm looking up to him, and he's got advice. He's got a lot of advice about uh, women and romance. Not that you really see him in any kind of romantic situations, but yeah, I think that you know not to take anything away from all the peripheral characters because they really are fun and fantastically cast and interesting. But the essence of that bromance is definitely a big part of what people really like in the movie, I think.
Looking at all your movies, you've done some movies that are very, very effects heavy, green screen,
Hmm.
all of that. and then we have graboids, which are made from rubber. Which do you prefer?
Well, green screen is never fun for an actor, you know. To act with a tennis ball or something that's green, although we're doing sort of less and less of it as the technology is starting to, you know, get even easier and more, I don't know, developed. On the other hand, I can tell you that there were times when I would look at how the guys were delivering the effects, which was a lot of times basically puppetry. And I'd go, whoa, I don't know if this is going to work. I mean, we were on the cusp at that point. I don't know exactly. I can't really where the digital or the CGI, I guess is what we would call it then. Um, Technology was at the time, but it certainly was beyond, like, you know. And yet, there's something like really infectious and cool about what they did, and something that lends it. It just feels more personal, you know. I think it's a good movie for young people to look at and say, you know, this was all just nothing was done, you know, in post, or very little, you know. One of my favorite gags was when you see the wave of the monster through the desert, and they basically built a trench and had a ball and covered it with dirt, and then dragged the ball, you know, just down the trench with the dirt, so you just saw that thing. You would never do that now. You'd go, you know, done. But you know, the ingenuity that they had in order to do that, and I remember just, you know, them talking about the just buckets of that goo, you know, being on the set and talking about how to, you know, make more goo and what color it was going to be, and you know, the choice of that sort of like orange kind of vibe. It wasn't white blood, but it was like, it was all very, very well done. I thought really, really well thought out.
Talk a little bit more about that and sort of explain how technology is kept.
Yeah. Well, you know, at the time, um, there were movies that were made. All movies were made for theatrical. Once in a while, people would make something that they really were only focused on going direct to video, but generally everyone had the hopes that uh, something would become a blockbuster. If a blockbuster was then, you know, whatever it was, 6 months later or a year later in the video store, that would become a really big rental title. But there were also titles that were huge rental titles. A lot of times they were in the genre kind of world, um, you know, horror or kind of more over the top sort of action thing, or were branded with some kind of a title that would make them sell, you know. And Tremors just started being rented and re-rented and re-rented and re-rented, and it kind of um, uh, started this kind of groundswell of a title that you could really use for home entertainment, and that you could share with your family, because it was neither a gross out comedy that would have things that were too inappropriate for children, nor was it so violent that a kid couldn't watch it. it fell kind of in the middle, and it was still scary enough to make a teenager like not roll his eyes at it, but not so scared that a 10-year-old really definitely shouldn't see it. And so uh, not only the original, but all the sequels just have had this kind of life, and onto DVD and now on digital platforms, and it's fun. It's fun for me to see the actual digital transfer, because you've now gone back to the beauty of what that 35 millimeter print should have looked like when it got transferred to video, but the technology of video itself and the players and the monitors that we were using were just kind of crappy. But now you can really see what the movie was intended to look like. I've actually seen a projected 35 millimeter print, which was also amazing.
And what do you think sci-fi monster movies of today could learn from Tremors?
Well, I mean, I guess one thing that's good about Tremors is, even though the monster is, it never really gets too much of a personality, you know what I mean? It never speaks. It never morphs into a face where you actually see it, you know what I mean? It doesn't have as much personality as, say, dragons, and yet it remains a threat, and it remains scary. And I think that the reason that works is because the characters are well enough drawn that their reaction to it is kind of embodying this threat. Because when you really look at it, you know, it's kind of scary, but it's really about the fact that these people are just so terrified of it, and the isolation, I think, that they feel. That's something that's been used in horror a lot, whether you're on a spaceship and can't get anywhere, or you're wherever it happens to be, but locked in a house. I also think, as I mentioned before, that if you want a real challenge, make something scary that's outside during the day, because most scary movies are inside at night, and so exterior day is a real challenge.
So what if you had to do like an elevator pitch for someone who's never seen Tremors? What would you tell them just quickly?
Oh, I'd say two not very smart handymen battle underground worms in the desert.
But what do you think was that thing about Tremors that kind of made it walk both sides of that line so successfully?
I think it's just really, really well written. I think the writing, the dialogue, the characters are well drawn, and it the comedy that's there is very, very character based. It's not joke based. It's not really like set up joke. There's nothing that anybody says that is necessarily comedy writing, really. It's just that who these two guys are, what their relationship is. The fact that Bert is living in this bunker and has this insane arsenal. I mean, the arsenal, the sight gag of the arsenal itself is funny, and with the when he comes out with these, whatever they are, giant, I don't know, elephant guns or bazookas or whatever it is, that in and of itself is funny. You don't need to have a joke kind of written to make that work. I think it's just a really, really well written script and a really well constructed world.
And then bit about Michael Gross and how were you first introduced to him? Pop culture.
Well, like most people, I knew Michael Gross from Family Ties, and that was a incredibly successful show and funny, great, amazing, and he was great on it. And it was really an interesting kind of casting choice and a flip because he was really known as being this, kind of super liberal, you know, um, dad kind of part, Uh, you could have gone a completely different way with Burt Gummer. It could have been a flat top wearing, kind of more marine. Um, it could be somebody I can't even think of something. I don't know what the casting process was, but there were a lot of. I think the casting Michael was a little bit against type, and he completely embraced it. And then I felt like Reba having never acted before, I don't know, but I'm guessing that he was kind of helpful in terms of that, and the two of them had this. I really believe them as husband and wife, and they had this kind of like good sort of working marriage. There was a kind of symbiosis to the way that marriage was working, and I thought it was in its own way was very touching. I thought.
Then, what do you remember about working with him on set?
Michael was really took his work very very seriously, and of course I really respond to that. Someone that is really thoughtful. I don't think that you vary your technique or your research or your commitment or the time spent or the amount that you care about something based on the material. I think that if you're a really good actor, then you have to go into every project the same kind of focus and character development, understanding of what your character would say or wouldn't say or would do or wouldn't do, and that's I respond to that, and that's what he had. I remember, him having conversations with the writers and with the director and going, well, would Bert do that, or yeah, it was great. Yeah, he was extremely professional, as was everybody in the movie. We really had to be because the conditions were so difficult.
Lastly, you've said that Valentine is one of the only characters that you really wanted to revisit over the years. Why is that, and what do you hope that Val Mickey is doing now?
Yeah, I think that I played a lot of characters, and when I look at that guy, I think to myself, where would he end up in 30 years? What I like to think that that was his moment of glory, and that he would sort of try to relive it again and again and again. But the question is, if you don't have worms underground, then what are you really left with? You know. So yeah, I just think that I don't normally think that way about when I finish a character, I really kind of tend to put them to bed. But that guy, for some reason, has I don't know, just kind of stayed in my mind. Um, it's interesting because when you talk about how people end up, me going back and kissing the Rhonda character was a reshoot. I don't know if anyone's ever mentioned that. In the original movie, um, she just left, and I guess, and me and Earl just kind of drove off in the desert. And I think they tested it, and people were disappointed about that because they felt that Val they wanted him to have some kind of change, and that. So basically, we went back, and in maybe one day of shooting, luckily I still had my long hair. I went back and kissed her, and if you look at it really carefully, you can see where the reshoot kind of begins, and obviously that was didn't turn it into a box office hit, but I think that it was probably a good idea ultimately.